Very much, Chairman. Ms. Taibleson, welcome. Tell me where the boundary is between First Amendment protected speech and unlawful prosecutable misconduct.
There are a few categories of speech that are exempted from First Amendment protections, and they are criminal. So examples are threats or fraudulent speech. Things like libel and defamation can be subject to civil litigation. Fighting words, incitement, those are the sort of standard categories of speech that are exempted from First Amendment protection and instead subject to civil or criminal liability.
And that is pretty established set of boundaries, right?
Yes, Senator, I should have been clear. I was answering with respect to Supreme Court precedent, not, it's not written in the text of the Constitution itself, yes.
But those boundaries have been there for a long time and are quite clear to ordinary, normal judges, correct?
The categories are reasonably well established. There are sometimes questions, about whether something fits into a particular category, whether it's conduct or speech. So not every case is easy, but I think the categories I listed are pretty well established in Supreme Court precedent.
Yeah. And does that boundary shift in any respect depending on which side of a public argument you are on?
Under Supreme Court precedent, viewpoint discrimination under the First Amendment is basically almost never okay. And so to the extent you're talking about viewpoint-based discrimination, which is to say sort of treating different speech favorably or less favorably under the law based on its viewpoint, that is subject to the strictest scrutiny under the Supreme Court's cases.
The reason I ask is that I think we're seeing an administration that wants to attack and perhaps even try to criminalize, at least burden with investigation and prosecution, protected speech that it just happens to disagree with, because the protected speech is to disagree with and challenge the administration. And I think it's really important in that contest that courts hew to that well-established line. Do you agree that courts really need to stick to their guns on this question of the line between First Amendment protected speech and unlawful conduct?
Every case has to be taken case by case with respect to the very specific speech that's in front of you and the facts and the law. And of course, Senator, the ultimate obligation of every federal judge is to follow the law.
And there's no rule that gives the president a special privilege to move that boundary just because he's the senior executive official.
The president has the authority to set our enforcement priorities, as every president has done, including in criminal prosecutions. And then within the scope of each criminal prosecution, the law will be applied to the facts of that particular case. And in that process, yes, it's the law that governs.
And the boundary remains the boundary.
Yes, Senator.
Yes. I wanted to just flag one additional thing. I mentioned this fairly often in these hearings, because court credibility often comes up as an issue, I think, in which we are all concerned. And I just want to take this opportunity to point out, with respect to court credibility, that if you look at the record of what is going on at the Supreme Court, and particularly you look at amicus practice in front of the Supreme Court, what I see regularly is a flotilla of anonymously funded, dark money funded right-wing groups that file packets of amicus briefs, 10, 12 at a time, in a really big case, as many as 50. And the court does not oblige them yet to disclose whether or not those amicus briefs are coordinated, scripted, commonly funded, multiple ways for the same actual voice to penetrate the Supreme Court case with seemingly independent, but actually like different piano keys on the same piano. And I think that's a failure of the court. And I also think that it becomes telling at some point when whoever's behind those briefs always wins. They don't always show up. They only show up when it matters to the interests who are behind those front groups. But my experience is, and we're trying to put some hard numbers to this, my experience is that when those right-wing dark money groups show up, they always win. And I think that does not help the credibility of the court. And I thank the chairman for allowing me to go 8 seconds over.